Dr. Maureen Frank, and I'm an assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the four main types of plants and how they're used by deer. The first type of plant that I'm going to discuss is woody vegetation. And by that, I mean shrubs or trees, anything with woody stalks and stems. An example of a woody plant is mesquite. When we're talking about deer, we commonly refer to these as browse species, and that's because deer are going to eat the leaves and sometimes the tender stems that are a part of these plants. Now, different plants have different values to deer. For example, mesquite is not one of the most palatable to deer, but they will use it. And what's really important about our woody vegetation is that this is one of our most consistent food sources for deer throughout the year. Our next type of plant is forbs. Forb is kind of a funny word that you might not have heard before, but really we're talking about things that are weeds. Plants that are growing on the ground that are not grass are forbs. Whereas grass has long linear leaves, forbs have broader leaves with veins that are branching as opposed to parallel. So an example of that is this cardinal feather. You can see the leaves on this cardinal feather are totally different from a grass leaf. They're a little bit rounded and they've got that little serrated edge. But forbs are important because they tend to be very high in protein and other nutrients that are important for deer. So forbs are the favorite of deer. They're very nutritious, but the problem with forbs is that they're usually mostly available during the spring, maybe a little bit into summer, depending on how much rain we get. And then if we get more rain in the fall, we may get another flush, but they're just not available quite as often as the browse are. But when they are, they're one of the very best things for deer to eat. Next to talk about is succulents. Succulents are cactuses. So for example, this prickly pear that's behind me. Those are not really a favorite food for deer, but they can be a valuable source of water during times of drought. So you can tell from looking at that prickly pear, we haven't had much rain here lately because the pads are getting pretty thin. But even that, compared to other sources, can be a useful supplement of water for a deer to use. The fourth type of plant is grasses. This grass that I have here is side oats grama, which is important to know because it's the state grass of Texas. And you can identify it because it has all of its seeds are coming off of one side of the stem there. Now, deer don't usually eat grass. If you have a deer that's eating, if deer on a property are eating a lot of grass, that's not good because it's harder for them to digest, and it means that there's probably too many deer or too many other animals on the property that are using up the browse and the forbs, and grass is just not, deer cannot survive eating only grass. However, grass is important for other parts of a deer's habitat. This time of year, when mama does are giving birth to baby fawns, grass is the ideal place to hide a newborn fawn. So if your grasses are being grazed too short because you're also managing for livestock on your property, then mama doe's not going to have a good place to hide her fawn, and your fawn survival is likely to be lower. So that's one of the reasons that grasses are important, even though deer aren't usually eating them. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is mast. Mast refers to fruits and nuts that are found on our browse, our woody vegetation, and on our succulents. For an example of this would be the acorns that we find on live oak, or the beans that are produced by a mesquite, the tuna on a prickly pear, or persimmons produced by a persimmon tree. These are really, really nutritious for deer. They're just only available during a short period of time, right? All of the acorns on a live oak are going to be ready and hitting the ground within a fairly narrow window, and deer love acorns. They'll use that resource a lot. They love persimmons. They'll eat mesquite beans. All of those are great. They're just not available year round. So that's why it's important to have a variety of different plants to support your deer population and keep them healthy year round. Especially because different plants have different nutritional values. So mesquite will be eaten by deer, but it's not one of the most nutritious. Another example of brush that is what we consider an ice cream plant for deer, or one of their favorite foods, is kidney wood. And if you have kidney wood and you have a lot of it because your deer populations are at a good level, then that's good because that's a great source of nutrition for your deer. So again, the four types of plants are woody, forbs, grasses, and succulents. And succulents and woody vegetation in some cases produce mast, which is another useful food for deer.